We're going to start with the hearing on House Committee Substitute Number 2 for House Bill 495. Representative Christ, you can begin when you're ready. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you, Senators. Brad Christ, District 96, South St. Louis County. I'm not going to belabor a long testimony today. We've heard this bill a few times now the last couple of years. But again, House Committee Sub Number 2 for 495 is to put a local board back in control of the City of St. Louis Police Department. And this year we added a number of other statutes to it to deal with some other crime issues, and happy to go over that as well. This conversation kind of evolves into conversations on crime stats. We get down rabbit holes, but I do want to reiterate in the testimony the stats that I really want to focus on, and most people behind this bill, are the undisputable facts that since the board has been removed, the City of St. Louis has lost about 13% of its population. Over 500 businesses have left the city since 2019. 1,000 uniformed officers have left the police force. The patrol budget's been decreased by millions, tens of millions of dollars, and investors and developers won't commit to the city, and it's affecting the entire state. Again, the bill is simply to take politics out of policing and make sure that law enforcement doesn't ride the waves of politics. This bill, through the House Committee Sub, mirrored the sub that came out of your committee over here. So it's pretty identical except for about 3 or 4 other statutes, which I can touch on if you'd like as well. But happy to take any questions or discussion.
Yeah, Representative, really quick, I've got a question that I guess Senator Gregory does too. So let's go through a couple of the provisions you have in here, because we had, obviously, our Senate version came through here, 52 and 44, which is on the Senate calendar. Do you know the differences? I know they're a little bit different. I don't know them off the top of my head, the differences between our version and your version, but maybe you walk through provisions so we know from a top level what's in your House bill.
That we put in addition to your sub?
Well, just go through the provisions from a top level view of what you have in there, so we know, these are the topics we're hitting in the House Committee Sub. Okay,
great. So first, obviously, the St. Louis Police Board change. In the first House Committee Sub, we had the stunt driving offenses, child endangerment increases for fentanyl, car fentanyl, the riding offense statutes, vehicle impoundment statute, the School Safety Committee. There's a bill by the representative from Warren over in the other chamber on mutual aid, where law enforcement can call on an important bill with the World Cup coming up. There's car burglary offenses. We added with the representative from St. Louis County Murphy District has carried the last couple of years, which is prevalent in my district. We get a lot of kids, minors, jiggling door handles that are armed and dangerous in the middle of the night, and so that's to deal with some of that. The things that we added on in legislative review in the House that aren't on your sub are a provision on the quo warranto language. If an official is removed or resigns during the quo warranto proceedings, they can no longer run or seek that office. They can run for other office, but not the one they're being removed from. We also added child trafficking, increases to the child trafficking statutes. So for under 12 years old, it went from 25 to 30 years, and between 12 and 18 years of child trafficking, it went from 10 to 25 years. We added a ankle bracelet sunset renewal. There was a sunset renewal in July of last year. It's in state law that if ankle monitoring device for a domestic abuse victim is active, if that perimeter is breached from that victim, that monitoring device must alert the victim and the law enforcement that perimeter has been breached. There's a sunset on that for some reason. I'm not sure the history of why there's a sunset on that, but this renews the sunset for that. We added a breathalyzer provision with which the representative from Jackson County Sharp District and the House was passionate about, which matches 30 other states on breathalyzer requirements for people that blow over 0.15. And then all the other provisions were on the Senate sub that you guys offered over here.
Great. And I know the one mutual aid piece is a priority for Senator Nirenberg there's some other pieces in there that you've thrown in that I think there's some priorities in the Senate. Great. Any questions? Senator Gregory, you have something for the representative? All right, you answered Senator Gregory's question. So let's start with supporters for the bill. So we'll go support and then opposition. So let's start with someone that's in support of House Committee Substitute Number 2 for House Bill 495. Please fill out a witness form for our records and proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, Senators. Jay Schroeder, President of Missouri Fraternal Order of Police. I know you guys are probably tired of seeing my face on this issue, but I'm here to testify in support on behalf of the Missouri Fraternal Order of Police and the St. Louis Police Officers Association. And I will stand for any questions.
Thanks, Jay, for being here. Senator Gregory, you have a question? No? Okay. Thank you for your testimony.
You got it.
Someone here to testify in opposition.
Good morning, Chair. Chief Robert Tracy, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. Okay, great. So as the past Police Officer Association President, you've seen me several times be up here testify in opposition of state control. This is my third year before the Infrastructure, Traffic, and Public Safety Committee. One of the things, I'm going to be pretty brief, I'm on the record both in the House and also in the Senate against this bill for a lot of reasons. And one of the things that we talk about was there was benchmarks 3 years ago that was asked as being a new police chief coming in. We're doing the same thing year in, year out. And one of the things that our mayor has done, saw that there was some challenges, and she made a change and hired the first outside police chief in a over 200-year history. So I could take a good look at what's going on, some of the things that we all have concerns about. And I did see some of the things that testifying before the Senate and some of the concerns that, yes, we talked about crime, we talked about manpower, we talked about, personnel. We talked about recruitment, retention. We talked about pay. And some of these things that were there, absolutely, we should all be concerned about that. It's something that we've been dealing with throughout the United States, especially with recruitment. But since that time, one of the things we asked, can you give this new police chief a chance? And one of the things is I was asked, are you really in charge? Because they didn't, well, you're going to be giving the tools and the authority to carry out things you need to do to make the changes to put us in a positive direction. Under state control, and another city that's under state control, we both have per capita, we have high crime rates. That's no secret in this room. But where are we at as far as what have we done since that time, since the mayor made the change, since she's given this chief the authority to go out and do the job, since the pay raises have come in? There's 2 pay raises that have come in since that time, and also we're in the economic reopener, a collective bargaining agreement again, to try to make us competitive. That's bringing more officers in, and we're losing less officers. But you know what? We're still losing to attrition. It's happening throughout the United States. And then we talk about morale. Yes, morale was down. Yes, we had a circuit attorney that was here that actually helped demoralize the police department. There's been a change since that time, since I first testified. That has picked up morale with the officers now. Every arrest that they're doing, people are being held accountable in the city of St. Louis when these men and women are going out risking their lives, doing a tremendous job each and every day. When we talk about the crime has been coming down. We'll just talk about homicides. And if you go to our website, it's very transparent about what's happening in the city of St. Louis. 263 homicides that were in 2000. It went down to 200 in 2021, 200 in 2022. And then my first year here, it went down to 160, 40 less homicides. Then it went down come back from those challenges. And then when we talk about morale, 27 officers that have left our jurisdiction have come back, and I've sworn them back in. Just 2 as last week, and I got 3 more that are coming back in March. They don't come back to an organization if they didn't think the economics and the morale was starting to come up. We still got work to do. A lot of places, the morale still needs to be better, but we're working on those things. I just wanted those things to be recognized before this committee on an opportunity to do that. My biggest worry is that well-intentioned going to state control, but I think the momentum that we have right now for the things that I talked about and testified in the past is going to interrupt that process. Even a new process that might come in might turn around and set us back in some of the goals that we've met and some of the progress that we've met. And those are some of my concerns as a police chief, whether we're under state control or whether we're under local control. We are going in the right direction, and I want to make sure that's heard before this committee, not to take away the good work of the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. And so for those reasons, I'm against state control. And I thank you very much for this opportunity and any questions you might have.
Chief, thanks for being here. I know this is inconvenient for you on a Thursday morning, 8 o'clock, and you always show up, and I appreciate that. It means a lot. I think it goes a long way, and appreciate your work also, your obvious passion. I think you're good at what you do. I think some of the argument here, and this is maybe a little bit outside of the realm of what you're called to do, but is the considerable concern for those of us that are trying to make these hard decisions is the city of St. Louis and the region is half of our state's economy. You've heard me make this argument. We've talked about it in person. There's a population shift out of the city that's concerning. That hurts all of us. How do you respond to that as an argument for why the state ought to be involved in how you're policing in the city, when I think there's a lot of concern about the outflow of folks from the city? I mean, when the governor talks about this, it's not necessarily all about stats. The stats that are concerning are the businesses and the folks that are leaving. That's the real heart of where we're trying to get at least to some extent on this bill.
Well, this is not the first city I've been in that's gone through these type of things, Senator. And I've seen this in New York go through somewhat of a renaissance. I've been part of that. Chicago's had those issues. I've been part of Chicago. Wilmington, Delaware, that was called Murdertown, USA. They were in some of the same things in the spiral that we're dealing with that have been happening for years. It takes time. It takes time for a new mayor to come in and to make sure they make those changes, start to get that investment coming in. But it really does start with public safety. I mean, if we could start to get the crime to come down, which doesn't happen overnight because we've seen what has happened in the past. I go back to my home city in New York City, and it's incredible what has happened, the boarded buildings. I go around Manhattan, I go around a lot of places, and they're trying to recover from that. We're all coming out of a pandemic. We're all coming out of civil unrest, and, very hard times. But I see things starting to move in the right direction, starting with the crime, and I think everything follows. So those things, we're on the right path, and there is a lot of hope. There are some businesses that have made some decisions to move out of the city, but I think a lot of that has to do with work from home type of strategies. And I talk to, I've been part of government in 3 other cities, and when I talk to my colleagues or I go to conferences, all the chiefs are talking about the same thing. Some are losing population, but some are coming back only because we try not to conflate the two issues, that this is more of a crime issue and people are leaving because of that. People are not coming back to work because some of them just do not want to commute anymore. So we're kind of balancing that. So I sometimes hope when we're thinking about that, that's taken into account. And that's really me coming from a person who's involved in politics, but I know when crime starts to get better, it takes a longer time for perception to catch up. And even if we went under state control, we're still going to have that perception issue, and it's still going to take time to catch up. So yes, I understand what's going on, but there are strides that I meet with a lot of the business communities. I meet with town halls. I meet with the mayor, and we're going a ground game for the last couple of years. And there's a lot of companies that, well, you say we have a lot of people leaving. There are a lot of companies that are staying because they're building confidence in what's happening as of recently. They're not getting into the battle of state local control. What they want to see is safety. They're starting to see some of that, and some of them are actually re-upping their leases, and they're going to stay because they're committed to the city, and hopefully we can bring more people in to do that and keep the businesses that we do have.
I just got to say really quick, just to commend you for the tricky position that I know you've got to be in city leadership in the way that you are, and go to bat for what that looks like, but also have to represent the police officers in the city and care about their opinions on top of it. And I appreciate your willingness to come and have honest conversations and fight in the way that you do. It means a lot, and I know you're doing the best with what you got, and I appreciate that very much. Senator Schroeder, go ahead.
Morning, Chief.
Morning, Senator.
Some interesting news over the past few weeks that is just shocking to me. I've never seen something like this. Are you familiar with the poll that went out to all the police officers in SLMPD about this bill?
I'm aware of percentages came out, but I was not aware of the poll, and I did speak to some police officers that never received that, so I'm trying to understand it myself.
I've spoke to a lot of police officers through the years up here working on issues like the Police Officers' Bill of Rights, many others. I've established a really good relationship, get their numbers at Guns and Hoses. I just spoke in the city of St. Louis at a fundraiser, so got to meet more. And it's staggering that 98%, this is what the poll indicated, 98% of the police force is in support of this bill. If those numbers are true, what does that say to you as the leader of the team?
Well, sir, I still, any type of poll out there, I'd love to know how that question was asked. I'd like to know who responded, the percentage of people who responded, who it was sent to. Because once again, sir, I've asked several police officers, as you have access to police officers, could you imagine the access I have, being the chief of police, going to roll calls, speaking to them, speaking with the union, having a good relationship with them, because we both all want the same thing. I want the best for our police officers. I want the best for the city. I want to see crime come down. So we can have a difference of opinion on how to get there, but please, my passion, I think the officers know that this chief has their back to make sure we can get the thing done. So they respect my decision on coming before this board. But if you can give me more on that, and just, sir, you seem to have more information than I do on that. Is there any way you can explain to me how that question was asked, how many people were polled out of the amount of officers, how many answered? And those are the type of things.
Yeah, we can get that information to you.
And I can answer it more clearly, because I had the same questions, and I did not get the feedback, but since you're bringing it up, I would love to know from the same information, and we can have that conversation about that, because for me to answer that right now would be very tough, understanding that. I know there's a lot of police officers that harken back to a time where we were under state control, but we also got to remember that it was the Police Officers Association and other associations that lobbied to go under local control at that time.
Well, and the Ethical Society of Police has always been against it, correct?
I'm not sure about that.
They have been. There are articles dating way back.
Well, I know someone's in this room that I'll be able to speak with afterwards. But these are the things that, how we got to where we were, it's a turn. And there's some things that, once again, we cannot, I believe sometimes we're conflating the pandemic and we're conflating civil unrest in the last several years, because we're going these officers' backs have been against the wall in the city of St. Louis and in the surrounding area. We've had Ferguson, where you're from, 2014. We've had the police officers demonized since that time. We had the Stockley riots. Then we had the pandemic, where everybody was separated, and even police officers getting sick. Then we have George Floyd. My God, this place has been going for 10 years. This is an honor for me to be in this position, to know that I'm here as a chief, to be a chief, not to stay a chief, to be political, but to go out and do the passion, to have these officers back, to try to lead them at such a dramatic time in the last 10 years. If they feel that way, I speak to them all the time. You can ask, I go to roll calls, I ask questions. They don't really get into the politics of state versus local with me. What they do get into is what their needs are and some of the concerns they have. And that's my main concern.
What do they need right now? What are you hearing the most of?
Well, they want more officers, and everybody wants. This chief wants more officers. I would love to be at budgeted strength. I would love to be where we were 25 years ago in this department. There's not a chief out there that would say, give me less officers. But I have to make do with the officers that we have, and it's not how many officers you have. What do you do with the ones that you do have? And they're doing a tremendous job. By the crime stats that we see, those officers are doing a tremendous job, and they want the cavalry to come in. I've only been here 2 years. I told you it would take even I had a bus full of 300 officers in the back pocket that were available for the academy, it would take us 18 months to 2 years. I'm only in here for 2 years, but our recruitment has gone up. The amount of people in the academy has gone up since that time. Our attrition has slowed down. We've gotten 2 raises, and we're in the middle of collective bargaining agreements. They want money, and we've come through with the money. No, they're not going to be the highest paid, but we're going to try to get there, Senator. And those are the things that I sit in those negotiation rooms, and I'm supposed to be on the administrative side, management side. But I'm certainly a champion for what's best for our officers to make sure that it's in my best interest as well to have them well paid so I can recruit and retain the officers. So I think they know they have a chief that doing this for 41 years, so it'd be my 42nd year, that champions our officers because it's a noble profession. We got to get them back in. They have the same concerns I do, sir, and I'm going to follow through whether I'm continue in local control or if I'm honored enough to be in this job. One, if it goes under state control, I'm here for the mission. And you know, that's a choice if things make change, and I'd be honored if I would be asked, but that's not in my control. What's in my control right now is to try to take care of business under the circumstances we have.
Let me bring up another interesting study or survey that recently just came out, and it impacts, I think, as a whole, the law enforcement and recruitment, retention, I think the entire community. So, you know, you've got the issues with the trash pickup or failure thereof to pick up the trash, failure to clean the streets on time. We also have a 911 system that just came under scrutiny as a survey published by KSDK shows 22% say that no one shows up to the city 911 calls, and the mayor's defending her record on homelessness and public safety. In this article, it's staggering. Do you have any information on that? Can you give us any insight as to how this can happen? 22% of people calling 911 saying nobody shows up.
Once again, you know, you have a survey out there that really, you know, when I put things on my thing, I put a key or legend of how I got to those things. So throwing a number out there, did they go into, was that a calls for services was diverted for possibly a mental health issue that was no weapons involved, where we can take that? Is it something that it's an old, it's a past burglary of a garage where we have a telephone reporting unit, and therefore, if you want a police officer, can we respond? So there's so much detail missing in that 22%.
Are you aware of any instances where someone calls 911 and nobody shows up? Or is this news to you?
What I do know is that since we've been here, the mayor has inherited a 911 system that was less than 50% personnel filled. And now she's almost got it up to 100% budgeted strength, depending on the day, and we continue to hire people.
But are you aware of any instances where...
If there's an incidence of where we do not respond, I actually research it. I send my commander out to understand what the reasons are, how the 911 call was received, how it was triaged, and then how it moved over to a dispatch.
Is that happening often?
You know, there are delays, but no, we do respond to, we respond to our calls, or there is a callback depending on the incident, or it's coded out. So if I do hear of any of those, and that survey that I did read, which I didn't understand, because it talked about not just police, it talked about first responders, it talked about fire, and also talked about EMS. So this is not just purely policing. So I can't speak.
Well, and I agree with you. It's not purely policing. I think when
Right.
you have the management of... Okay, one moment.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're going to get a quorum really quick so we make the committee official. Alyssa, call the roll.
Senator Fitzwater.
Here.
Schnellting. Brown. Gregory. Shore.
Here.
Washington. Weber. O'Laughlin.
Quorum being established, we're officially in committee. Sorry, Senator, go ahead and you keep.
Yeah, and I think, like I said before, it's all of these different aspects and who's managing, who's calling the shots, basically. They're also dropping the ball in other areas, like the 911 management, like picking up trash, like homelessness. There's so many issues here, and this is not a political attack. When we see a problem, you know, and I've got 2 girls, and one of them is to the age where if I criticize, and hey, let's go pick up your room, you hate me, and it's a big fight. And if anybody has kids, I'm sure you can all feel the anxiety there. And this is not a fight. Like the chairman said, this is an issue that impacts the state as a whole. This is an area where I grew up and would spend many of my weekends, many of my weeks, many of my summers in the city of St. Louis. And then becoming an adult spending a lot of time and money, blood, sweat, and tears, and seeing it erode, and the impact that it's having on our state, the impact that it's having on people. When I have police officers that are coming to me at Guns and Hoses, crying on my shoulder, saying that they're working in the streets, not getting a paycheck because it never ended up in their account. They get a paper check from the city, which bounces. And this was stuff that was verified last year. This, as a whole, is a situation we're dealing with. So by no means am I trying to attack you. I think you are in a tricky situation, like the chairman said. There's other choice words that I would use, but since we're in a committee, I'm going to be more professional. The other thing I wanted to ask about, which we touched on, and I couldn't ask questions in the last committee when this bill came up, when the Senate bill came up, was the firing range, a shooting range. Another news story here recently said that the shooting range is in ruins. Can you give us any update on that? Because a lot of these police officers have to get retrained, recertified, and if they can't use their own equipment, if they can't use their own shooting range, what are they to do?
Well, unfortunately, we're going through a political time right now. And we're going through a political time where there's opponents and there's proponents for state versus local control. So every issue is going to be brought up. It's going to be brought to the fore. Certainly like this. And the information sometimes can be used and leveraged, like I think it's happening right now with some of the things that you talked about. First, I'll get to the range. But when it talks about a city, I've lived in 4 cities. I moved to the city. I have 5 kids. My wife is a school teacher on the Hill at St. Ambrose. We're invested in this city. The 911 system that I have to rely on for my family is the same 911 that I have confidence in as the police chief, because I've seen it. You can hear some surveys. We got to make sure that perception catches up to reality. There were issues that the mayor's addressed that's been there for years, and she's actually got those things fixed where 90%, well, a call picked up in the first 10 seconds, 90% of the calls within 10 seconds is an industry standard. We've got that from almost 40% when she's taken over to well up to into the 80s right now. That move, so that's pretty high standard for someone that's improved. So this mayor is looking at these issues. I'm part of that 911 system because I have my dispatchers there. That was a key thing that I said we have to get the pay up, we have to be competitive, and the mayor responded to that. So some of those things, sometimes you can take surveys, but you got to look at the progress that's being made. We're not perfect. No city's perfect. But I've lived in 3 other cities, and I chose to stay in this city because I have the confidence in the system and the leadership. I would not put my own family at risk. This is not me to prop them for the position that I'm in. I feel the safety. My whole family is coming in from Mardi Gras, and I have kids that are adults, and they're coming from Chicago, and they're coming from over. They're not going to be with me. They're going to be all over the city. This is a great city, and sometimes we're dwelling on some of the things that you're talking about. But I think when it comes to the range, it's another issue because we have a debate here. We have a debate about the issues of why we should go from local to state control. Yes, the range has had its issues. Yes, it has wear and tear. But it's a range.
Is it usable right now?
No, it's not usable because it was.
How long has it been in that position?
It's been an expected shutdown, sir. And we knew about this. But this is a thing, we get wooden berms that are going to be damaged by projectiles over a 10-year period. We understood at a time its lifespan would run out. There's been plans to shut this range down. I have emails, sir, that we had plans to shut down this range at a certain point to put out a purchase order to do a bid by February of this year and hoping to open it back up in July. To put new berms up, to make sure we can make sure it's safe. But we used it up until the point where it was no longer safe to close it down in December. There's a lot of information out there that's misinformation. There's a lot of information out there.
But it seems like, not to interrupt, but it seems like every time we bring an issue up to those that don't want state control or don't want to fix the problem, whether it's in 2022 and the FBI says that St. Louis used the wrong data or misreported statistics, or the gun range, or not getting officers paid properly, or the recruitment, or the retention, or picking up trash, or picking up the snow and the ice. It's always somebody else's problem. In all of these news reports, these are from organizations that aren't necessarily friendly to the Republican Party, and they're being critical of what's happening in the city, not necessarily you, but the management of the city as a whole. And it seems like every single instance, it's somebody else's issue. So with that, I would give back my time, and I'll reserve it for other witnesses. Thank you.
May I answer that question, Chair?
Go ahead, Chief.
It's never been anybody else's issue in this, Senator. With your question that you asked and the statement you made, I've owned every issue coming through the door for the last 2.5 years. They've asked me to come in as outside eyes to take a look at things in our realm. And I've also seen things that this mayor has come in to take a look at the issues she inherited. And she's doing a tremendous job in some of the things that you talked about. But then these things have happened from state control into local control. And now you have a mayor that's fixing them. You have a brand new police chief that is looking at these issues. And when we look at these issues, it's not because you're bringing them up. We're already working on those issues, but people are taking advantage of them to bring it to your attention when we're in a room like this. But to say it's someone else's issue, no, I take ownership, and so does the mayor, for everything that's happening in the city, because this buck stops at me, and that's why I'm here today. So I don't want that to be put out that when a problem comes up, we point fingers somewhere else. The finger points back at me when it comes to my police department in the city of St. Louis and the officers that work with me. So I kind of want to go on the record with that, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Proponent of the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Todd Scott with the Missouri Attorney General's Office, and I will keep my comments brief this morning, directed at a couple of provisions of the bill. One thing that probably doesn't get enough discussion about this bill is that one of the advantages would be that it moves the St. Louis Police Department back under the protections of the State Legal Expense Fund. And it was that way in the past, and then under the changes about a dozen years ago, those officers no longer have that protection. We're very proud of the work we do at the Attorney General's office. We are the state's law firm. We have one client, that's the state of Missouri. The officers and employees of the state, and that includes, for example, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, the Kansas City Police Department. We represent those officers, and we think we do a fine job with that. The last thing any officer should have to worry about when they're out on the beat doing a job that's very difficult and very dangerous, the last thing they should have to worry about is whether they will have adequate legal representation if something goes sideways and they end up in a lawsuit. We are happy to provide that. We think we do a great job at that, and this bill will bring the case, this Kansas City, or sorry, the St. Louis Police Department back under the auspices of the State Legal Expense Fund. The second point, as was raised earlier, this bill would make a change to the Quo Warranto statute, and there have been instances where an individual, and Quo Warranto, just to step back, it's not a term we use very often, but it is a legal proceeding that the Attorney General can take to remove a public official who is derelict in their duties or is guilty of, misfeasance or malfeasance or just not doing their job. And so we have undertaken that within the last couple of years. In fact, in the city of St. Louis, the Attorney General had to move in and issue Quo Warranto or begin Quo Warranto proceedings. The concern is that if an individual, a public official, resigns during the pendency of those proceedings, that it moots the case and they could potentially rerun or run again for that same office down the road. And so we'd like to close that loophole to say that if a resignation occurs during the case, the Quo Warranto action, that they would be banned from running for that office. And I'll conclude my remarks there. Happy to answer questions if I can.
Any questions for the Attorney General's office? Thank you, Todd. Appreciate your testimony. Anybody here to testify? Anybody else in opposition? Proceed when you're ready.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Jared Boyd, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving as Chief of Staff to Mayor Tashara Jones, and have testified on this matter several years, my first this year in this session. But I started in the St. Louis City Mayor's office in April of 2021, and one of my morning rituals is reading a summary of the serious crimes that occur in St. Louis the night before. And when I started this job in 2021, my mornings would often start with this report that would show 3 people being killed and other serious crimes. And that was a reflection of the time that we were in. We were dealing with COVID. We were dealing with a lack of trust and civil unrest. And it was a very heavy way to start your day. And since that time, we have made progress. In 2020, we had a record number of homicides, 263. And since that time, we've cut homicides, and I say we as in the police and other departments, have cut homicides by over 40%, looking at last year's data. We've also increased the number of homicides we're solving. So our clearance rate was in the low 40s or under 40% before Mayor Jones took office, and now it's well over 70%. And I think that's a reflection of not just great police work from our men and women at SLMPD, but it also reflects the amount of community trust and cooperation that lead to solving several of these cases. So these numbers are, I don't think, a fluke or by accident. It starts with strong leadership, and we are proud to have brought in Chief Tracy, who has testified today in many instances and has a proven track record of reducing crime in places like New York, Chicago, and Wilmington, Delaware. We've also started other organizations or supports to help the police, not to take away from the police. So our Office of Violence Prevention helps with prevention and intervention and hopefully makes the police's job easier. Again, the resources that were used to start and continue the Office of Violence Prevention were in no way taken away from other public safety initiatives. We've also started an Office of Behavioral Health to connect those who are addicted to opioids with services and help them with behavioral health. So to ensure that police are not responding to those types of instances when they could be responding to violent crime. And then in terms of other types of leadership, the mayor plays an important role in two respects. One, holding a chief accountable just for bottom line performance and not getting involved in the minutia of policing, letting the chief be the chief, and ultimately holding them accountable for performance. When it comes to employee discipline or promotions, the mayor nor my office, nor her office are involved in those types of decisions. Those types of decisions are made by the chief of police based upon data and performance. They're not based upon politics. In any instance in which politics come into play, someone's friend or family member is disciplined or is thought of being promoted, we stay out of those types of decisions and try and insulate the police chief from that type of influence. And then the mayor's other responsibility with public safety comes down to resources, making sure the police chief and other departments have what they need to do their job. So when we talk about wages, police officers in the last 2 years have gotten increases of 15 to 20% in actual funds, and an increase of almost $20 million in the police budget. So making sure the police chief has what he needs and our officers have what they need to do their jobs and other resources. And then I think the other aspect of our turnaround in terms of decreasing crime and homicides comes down to accountability. The chief and other officials are in the community hearing directly from constituents on policing matters, and if our citizens in St. Louis are upset with the direction, they have the time-honored tradition of voting out the mayor or other officials. So that is a critical accountability measure that is in place for St. Louis residents. And like I said, it ultimately, this trust, this accountability is what has been critical to ensuring that we solve cases. So hearing new complaint, or I guess new rationale and for this move for state control. The first year I started testifying on it, this bill, it was about the crime rates. And as has been testified, they're not where we want them to be, but significant progress has been made. The second year was about pay. And like I said, we're not exactly where we want to be from a overall number of police officer standpoint, but as indicated, we've made significant progress on pay. And this year, I guess we're hearing the rationale being about population loss. And so I, am always open and interested in ways in which we can collaborate on population loss and reversing that trend. But the fact that you all are not leading with crime data and pay data, I think is a reflection of the progress that has been made as well. So, like I said, strong leadership and accountability have been integral parts of reducing crime in St. Louis and leading to overall trust. And what I am concerned about is with the governance of state control. And as stated, trust and people feeling as if they have a say in the way they are policed has been essential to us solving crimes and people feeling safer. And I'm concerned that one of the unintended consequences of state control is that people in St. Louis may not feel as if they have a say in the way they are policed. And when people don't feel as if they have a say in the way they are governed, we sometimes get the perception that we're a colony and not a city. And colonies are places in which people feel as if they have no say in the way they are governed, and that would make St. Louis fundamentally less safe. So, as I've stated before, we want to make sure that people have trust in the way they are governed, trust in the way they are policed, and if they don't feel that way, they now have the time-honored tradition of casting their ballot against the person who is entrusted with holding them safe. So for those several reasons, I represent the city and oppose to this legislation.
This isn't really a question as much as it's a response to your statement that the rationale has changed over time. I can't speak for any other senator, but my rationale has always been that the city of St. Louis is losing population. That's a failure flywheel we're on. That's a drag on the whole state's economy. So my rationale has never changed. A strong St. Louis is a strong Missouri. And that still hasn't been rectified, which is why we've still prioritized legislation like this over the 3 years that I've been the chair of this committee. That's always been my rationale. It hasn't been anecdotal evidence of the decline of the city. It's that without St. Louis City being strong, we don't have a strong Missouri. So that remains my rationale. It will continue to be my rationale. And it will be why this bill will be a priority for as long as I'm in this role. And so I just want to make that statement because I think that needs to be clear. It's not anecdotal evidence. It's the actual evidence of people leaving the city. The population decline almost 10% just since the last census. And I know it's been going down for a long time, which is concerning in and of itself. So I'm not placing all the blame on your administration or even the previous administrations because this is a multi-decade situation. We're not making it better. We're doing our best to make it better. And we may not have all the best answers, and this isn't a silver bullet, but it is a answer. And the rationale behind it is strong. Any questions for Senator Shore?
Again, this isn't necessarily a question. You can chime in. I try to look at what other cities are doing and the results that they're getting. And like the chairman said, St. Louis is bleeding population, bleeding business. Again, not directly your issue. This has been going on for quite some time. But in 2024, and I want to use this date because on the Senate floor, it was alleged that St. Charles County is more dangerous, that we have more murders, which by the record, we only had 7 murders last year. St. Louis had 150 murders with 280,000 population. Still very high. You think that's too high, correct? 150 murders?
Absolutely, and one life lost
right.
is too many, and we live with people who experience that. You may see it on the news, but we live in the communities where the people who are impacted by gun violence live, and When the newspapers have left, when the camera crews have left, those people are still our neighbors. They still have the scars of those issues.
Well,
So,
let me bring
yes.
up a couple other similarly situated cities. We've got Cincinnati, Ohio. They've got a little bit more population, 311,000, but only had 72 homicides. Cleveland, 359 population, had 44 homicides. Nashville, Tennessee, very busy right now. It's like a mini New York City. They've got 687,000 population, only 104 murders last year. In Kansas City, there's been a lot of talk about Kansas City that has doubled the population, 511,000 in Kansas City, Mo, 144 murders. Again, I agree with you. One life lost is too much. But let's also look at what the people on the ground that I've spoken to, the Clippers and Cops. Are you familiar with these town halls that are happening all across St. Louis City?
In barbershops.
Correct. Have you been to any of them?
I have not.
Okay. So speaking to a lot of the Missourians that are coming out and the St. Louisans that are coming out, there is a problem right now. There is a problem with trusting police. There's a problem with trusting the administration. There's a problem with trusting everybody because there's not that community policing aspect in their mind. Not saying that I spoke to these alderwomen in particular, but Boyd and Tyus here recently voted no on retaining local control. And I don't know if you heard the speeches on the floor of how, in a nutshell, policing and community policing was a lot better under, especially North St. Louis, under state control. Are you familiar with those speeches a couple weeks ago?
I saw some of them, or portions.
And again, this is why this is not, in my mind, it's not a political issue whatsoever. This is about listening to the men and women who have come to us saying we need help. And again, the poll, 98% of the police force is basically clear with consistent with what we have heard from the police officers. So I want to thank you again for coming out. I know you've got a tough job to do, but I think all of us on this committee, all of them behind you, regardless of where they stand on these bills, want a safer and a more prosperous St. Louis.
Sure. So I born and raised in St. Louis. And I think when we talk about state control, there's this causation and correlation issue. I lived in St. Louis in the 90s, where we had a lot more police, and we still had a lot of homicides. And if I was an officer and was told about, the regime under state control in the 90s, there were just simply more police officers. There were more people who were attracted to the field of policing in the 90s. So if someone said, could I go back to an era where I had more colleagues and had more resources from a personnel standpoint, I would say, yeah, I would like more colleagues. I would like more people who help me with this job. The problem is in 2025, from a labor market standpoint, we're not going to be able to go back to the 90s with state control. I talked to my colleagues in Kansas City, and they have some of the same challenges that we have, even though they're governed differently, even though they're under state control. This is not a magic wand for more police officers. Yes, I hear the desire to go back to those times, but Kansas City is short, and they're not short. I cannot say that they are short because they're governed inefficiently or improperly, or that people don't want more police officers. People want more police officers in blue cities across the country, in red cities across the country. There's some municipalities in California that are giving $100,000 raises or bonuses to attract police officers. This is a national labor market shortage. And I commend the chief and the police department and the police foundation for being much more aggressive about recruitment. But we are, like I said, combating a nationwide shortage when it comes to police officers, and look forward to, working with whomever on how to increase that pool as opposed to just poaching officers from different municipalities. So I think there's this notion of going back to a different time, and that's just not going to happen in 2025. So I think I caution us from saying that we're going to automatically go back to the way things were with state control. And I think that goes for the speeches of Alderwoman Tyus and Boyd. I mean, they lived in St. Louis under a time where there were more police officers. But I would also note that when we look at that drop, that 40% drop in homicides, almost all of that, or the majority of that, is driven by the dramatic decline of homicides in the 5th and 6th District, which are parts of North St. Louis. So while we have lost population, while we don't have as many officers, we have moved forward and made progress.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in support of House Bill 495?
Good morning, Senators. Donnie Walters, and I am a police officer with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. I've been a police officer for starting 23 years. So I have had the opportunity to be under both state control and local control. And I've heard numbers. I've heard homicides. Homicides is down nationwide. You can Google it. I have friends in various departments. Unlike the chief, who I have the utmost respect for, who I know both professionally and personally, I've been a citizen of the city of St. Louis for 53 years. I've been a police officer for 23 of those 53 years. Yes, I've lost a father in the old 8th district. When we had 9 districts, I lost an uncle in the 8th district. I lost an aunt in the 8th district. So when I graduated the academy, I worked the 8th district. And yes, it was more police officers. It was a lot more police officers. But I'm not going to talk about the manpower. I'm going to talk about some of the simple things. We used to have promotional testing every 2 years. Every 2 years, so officers had something to look for. They had something to look for as far as going up in the ranks, to becoming one day a chief. Better yet, even a lieutenant. We lost officers because the promotional process under local control decreased. They treated us like any other of their other departments. We talk about the vote of the people. You're right. The people voted for local control. But the people also voted for, city residency. However, it went to the state, and the state overrode local residency. Why? Because under local control, they could not get certain individuals to fill some of the local positions. So how is it that in one aspect it's okay, but not the other aspect? Senator Schroer, you spoke about a survey. I received a survey from State Representative Kimball on the 25th of this month asking about how do I feel about local control versus state control. So that's 2 surveys I've completed. I represent or speak for the Ethical Society of Police, which is over 200 members, and that's both minority and non-minority. That's both commissioned and non-commissioned. So I'm talking about those civilians that's not here to testify. We got a police garage that went up to pretty much triple the work, because now not only do they have to work on police vehicles, they got to work on city vehicles, and they got to also work on ambulances. Yet, they were not compensated. They have not been compensated. And I'm not talking about this administration, but 10 years ago, when the police academy's elevator went out, the city did not fix it. We had an officer, his name is retired, his name is Michael Pratt. On the job, he had an received word that no.
Sir, did that microphone shut off somehow? It's got a green light there.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
So we had a unaddressed plumbing issue and leaks. So we all know water damage causes mold in a police station. South Patrol has a gnats and insect infestation in the holdover. Central Patrol has mice and rodents in the basement and the bureau. These are things that technically we fall up under local control and should be fixed. We talk about the raises. Yes, the raises were substantial, but these next set of raises is for officers 1 to 20 years. I have 23 years, but I get 2.4% opposed to everyone getting 7%. You ask, why do I stay? Because my mother lives in the city of St. Louis. Like the chief has family, so do I. My mother called the police when it was a abandoned vehicle. Nobody came. She called me the next day, and I said, Mom, call again. And it took almost 24 hours for that car to be picked up. Secondly, I had a friend call me and say, hey, I'm at the intersection of Natural Bridge and Kings Highway. It's a bad accident, and it's an elderly person involved. And I said, well, did you call 911? Yeah, we tried 911 and we didn't get anybody. We're calling right back. And I'm listening to them on the phone. I've had residents call me just as of yesterday. A resident in North St. Louis called me and say, Sergeant Donnie, the park's about to pick up. What's the plan? And I said, well, ma'am, you have to talk to. And she's like, I'm tired of talking to. I go to community meetings daily. We talk about some of the resources that we have. I know for a fact that I've been involved in certain resources where we've called out our CRU and the person going through crisis and the individuals that show up from behavioral health say, well, okay, we'll try to get them some resources, and they leave, and I'm still left to deal with that person. I stood in front of 150 from last year, and I apologize to them for not being able to save their loved ones. At the end of that, and the chief was there as well, at the end of that, one of the family members asked me, why are there more homicides in the city than in the county? Those are the questions I get asked. As far as individuals leaving and coming back, I did a study on muni hopping, or should I say millennials in law enforcement almost 10 years ago. Because I teach de-escalation, I was in recruiting, and I taught at the academy. It's a trend. Young individuals bounce from one company to another, as well as one department to another, and they come back. We have an officer right now that's in recruiting. He left, went to St. Louis County, was out there, came back. All of them have different reasons. But I'm here to tell you that I know what it's like to be under both. Unlike, I agree, Chief has well over 40 years of service, but I came up through the ranks with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, and I'm still proud to serve this city, and I thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here this morning. Anybody else here to testify in opposition to the bill?
Good morning, Sharon Galloway-Jones here today from the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP. We oppose the bill not just because of the St. Louis police takeover and the loss of the local control there, but because of the other provisions that are in there. And I won't go into that. I know we've had lengthy conversations. A lot of those are the same as from the Senate bill. Just want to continue being part of that conversation.
Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else here to testify in favor of the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Scott Swain, representing a couple of entities here, the Legislative Law Enforcement Coalition, Gateway Alliance Against Human Trafficking, and the Missouri Police Chiefs Association. I want to lead you, one of the top priorities of the police chiefs is the mutual aid. Senator Gregory, I think it's important that you need to know that soccer is the #1 sport in the world, and so therefore the World Cup's going to be pretty amazing in Kansas City in 26. We're going to need all the help we can, all boots on the ground. Certainly the child trafficking stuff is important as well. So I want to commend the sponsor and go on record in favor.
Mr. Swain, I don't know if you've heard, but we're in America, and the #1 sport in America is not soccer. So that's a little bit debatable.
My statement was the world's greatest sport.
Yeah, well, some of us don't recognize that, what the world thinks. So,
Touche.
Any questions for
Briefly.
Senator Sherrill? Go ahead.
Mr. Swain, just for clarification, the Police Chiefs Association, did they support all of this bill?
They do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here to testify in opposition to House Bill 495? Anybody else here to support Senate Bill or House Bill 495? Anybody for informational purposes only?
Lisa Panett with Armor Vine. We support the majority of this bill, but have some pointed concerns. Endangering the welfare of the child, it takes the whole category and puts it under the dangerous felony. That was changed in SB 60 over here by you already, so we would like to see that change added in this bill and it just focus on the fentanyl piece. Opening up the policing to the entire country. We're not a fan of that. We don't want a United States police force. We don't want California police coming in to police here for a soccer game or not. We're opening up statute that forever is going to say that New York police can come in and police over our citizens. And removing 84.342, this hasn't been talked about that I've heard. It says it's going to be unlawful employment practice for an official, employee, or agent of a municipal police force to discharge, demote, reduce the pay of, or otherwise retaliate against an employee of the Muni police force for reporting to any superior government agency or the press the conduct of another employee that the reporting employee believes is in good faith is illegal. So we're saying to good police that they're not able to report things to a superior, to the press, that they believe something illegal is taking place. And I don't know why anyone would think that that's good policy. And that's the main things. Otherwise, we support the bill.
Questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to testify for informational purposes? Seeing none. Representative, any closing thoughts?
No, I really appreciate your time hearing the bill. Look forward to continuing it through the process.
Great. That'll conclude the hearing on House Committee Substitute Number 2 for House Bill 495. We are going to vote on this on Monday, so when we have that notice, it may be a little bit later, maybe a 3 o'clock hearing, but we will vote on this on Monday. So thank you, Representative. I move we adjourn. Second. Got a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Guys have it. We're adjourned.